Do you want to learn how I do my Sims 4 thumbnails? I'd be happy to show you. Now, do keep in mind, I am not a professional. I'm also not sponsored, so I will leave the link to GIMP below if you want to download it. It's 100% free. And I will also let you know I learned my technique from someone named Simpanions. I will also link that video down below if you want to check it out, because she does a few more things that I do not do in my thumbnails, and she might have some other tips and tricks that I'm not going to cover here. So go check that out. I will also link a card up here for you to check out. So let's dive right in. The first thing that I do is I start with a brand new GIMP file. I don't even open a screenshot. I don't do anything. I just open GIMP plain as day, and then I start with my background. So my backgrounds are usually just a screenshot but blurred so that the foreground stands out. So let's do that now. So I just go here to open. And then I find the screenshot I want to use, and you can find that if you go to Documents, Electronic Arts, Sims 4, and then you go to Screenshots, and typically you can sort it by date modified or time modified, and so you can, unless you've done a whole bunch of screenshots, you can usually find the one you want pretty quickly. So I will be making a screenshot for my 100 Baby episode 76. So if you haven't seen that yet and you want to watch it, I will, of course, include a card right here, and I will link it down below, and I would highly recommend that you go and watch that first before watching this video, because there are going to be some spoilers as I am putting together the thumbnail. Okay, so the thumbnail I chose is Effie, who has become an elder, sitting in the nursery with her sleeping child and knitting away, and I thought that was really fun. So the next thing I do is I go to the Filters tab up here, and I go to Blur, and I go to Gaussian Blur. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it in my head. And then I do make sure it's linked here. So if you do this, I don't know what it does, but I like to make sure it's linked. And then I do raise this up to 10. And I don't think that's going to be enough blur to make the foreground stand out on a tiny little, itty bitty little thumbnail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the shortcut to repeat this. You can also go to Filters, and this first option here, Repeat Gaussian Blur, you'll see the shortcut is Control F. So I'm just going to do Control F until it's blurry enough for my taste. And don't worry if you feel like it's too blurry. Once you size it down, it's going to be fine. So I'm just gonna do that, and I like it because there's a lot of color. So next I'm gonna do my border, and so I'm just gonna go over here to my layers window and right click the first layer and do new layer. And normally I'd want to do transparency, but we're gonna do white for the border, and you'll want to keep the pixels, the width and the height the same. And then I'm just gonna name it border. And you can always name it later if you want to change it. So here, and then now I'm gonna pick my color scheme. So since our background is so colorful, I think I'm gonna pick like a purple and a yellow maybe to kind of go with that. So while I'm picking my colors, I do want the background to show. And I think we're gonna go maybe with a darker yellow. Okay, so that's gonna be my foreground color. Then my background color I'm gonna choose will be, I think I want it to be more fuchsia, closer to fuchsia anyway. There we go, that's perfect. So let's make sure your border layer here is selected, and then I'm gonna go to this gradient tool or the blend tool. I'm gonna select that. You can also find that, I think, under tools and paint, or the shortcut is L. So then I'm just gonna drag this tool up or down if you want the yellow to come first, the foreground color to come first. Or if you want to do it this way, you can do that too, but I find I like doing it horizontally. And I think I do like the yellow at the top, so I'm gonna, oof, that's too much. Oh Lord, I can't find a happy medium. There we go, that I really like. It's not, see, if you drag it out further and you find the right balance, it'll blend a lot better, whereas if you do like that, then there's no blending at all. So we're gonna undo that because I really liked that one. So then you want to make sure, you'll click on your border layer again, you want to make sure there's an alpha channel. If this is grayed out, then you already have one and you don't need to do anything. The next thing you'll do is click alpha to selection, and then you'll go over here to select and you'll want to shrink it. So I like to shrink mine by 20. You can use any size you want, but I prefer 20, and then you'll want to invert it. So you can go to select again, and you can choose invert here, or I like to use the shortcut and I just do Control I, and then I just hit the delete button. And you can see there that the background is starting to show through. Now, before this next step, you want to make sure you invert again because we're going to shrink the border again. So you want to go to select and shrink, and then I like a larger border, so I'm going to do 25. And this time you don't need to invert, just delete, and there we have our border. So now I want to put a shadow on that border, and this took me forever to figure out. All you need to do is right click your border layer, choose alpha to selection, and then go to filters, light and shadow, and do a drop shadow. I prefer 15 on my offsets and 0 on my blur radius. You can choose any color you want, but I do like black. Click OK, and then it gives you a border. Now what I like to do before anything else is I like to move this drop shadow layer below the border, and then I merge the border down to this drop shadow. So all you'll do is right click on your border layer and hit merge down. And that's it. So now we've got our background and our border with a shadow. So then I hit select all just to kind of get an overview. And now I like to insert our Sims. So I'll go over to, actually I will click on the drop shadow layer, and if you want you can change the name again to borders just so you don't lose track of things, and select new layer. Now I want this one to be transparent. And this step may be unnecessary because we're also going to open as layers, and we're going to choose our sim that we want to put on our foreground. So here you'll see that the transparent layer really wasn't necessary, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And my idea, since Effie aged up, is I'm going to have a version of her that is young and kind of flirty looking, and then I'm going to have a version of her that is elder, and just dreaming about her family, because she's had 39 kids. Technically 41 if you count the twins that we didn't play with. But for the sake of the challenge, we've had 39 kids. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on this layer. I'm gonna add alpha channel. And then I'm gonna go over here to color select. You can also find that if you go under tools, selection tools, and by color select. And I'm just gonna click on this green background and hit delete, and now you can see our background behind it. So now it's already alpha to selection, which just means it's selected only the image, not the entire layer. So next I will want to invert, so Control I, and then I want to go to select and shrink, and I only want to shrink it by 1 pixel, and this was probably the most valuable step for me from the Simpanion video. This helps get rid of this green layer, so if we zoom in, you can still see some green around her. So you want to invert, shrink by 1, you want to invert again, Control I, and then you want to delete, and that gets rid of that really small green layer around her. So now, I think she's a pretty good size. I am going to select all, and then I'm gonna shrink her just a little bit because we want to add a border and a shadow. So you can find the shrink tool if you go under tools, transform tools, and scale, or over here in your toolbox you can choose the scale tool. And especially for Sims, you want to make sure that these ratios are locked. You don't want your sim looking all out of proportion. So I'm just going to shrink her a little bit. She's not going to stay this small, but I just want to make sure that we get the border. So, okay, so this is something that frustrated me for the longest time, this floating to selection. I have no idea why it shows up. If you know why this floating selection shows up, let me know in the comments below. But see, if I try to move her, actually it's working now. But usually if I try to move her, it won't move the entire picture, which is weird. So all I do to fix that is I right click the floating selection layer and I click to new layer. And then now she's added to a new layer, and the layer we were working on, there's nothing on it. So we can go ahead and delete that. So then you want to select the transformation layer, and we want to do alpha to selection again. And then we want to do a new layer, transparency, okay? And then we want to grow the border around her, but we want to make sure that this top layer is selected. So I like to grow by 3. And then I will either add a black or a white layer depending on what the background looks like and what the outer layer looks like. So I think I'm gonna do white just to keep it bright and happy. And then you wanna choose the fill bucket tool over here on your toolbox, or you can go to tools, paint tools, bucket fill. And make sure you have this border layer selected, and all you wanna do is fill it in. Now, the first time I did this, I had a mini panic attack and I thought I had gotten rid of my sim and just covered her in white. That's not the case. So select your top layer here again, drag it under the transformation layer, and now she has this beautiful white border around her. And then before I do anything else, I want to make sure I merge it down, because if I end up moving her, if I don't merge it down, it'll move the sim and not the white background. So now I'm going to add another layer of color around her. So I'm going to keep this alpha to selection. I'm going to grow by 8. And then I'm going to go back and choose the same yellow that we used on the border. And I'm going to... See, I just made a mistake there. I should have added a new layer. So we're going to Control Z, or you can go to Edit, Undo, Grow Selection. Right click the top layer, do a new layer, make sure it's transparent, and then you can go back and grow the border by 8. Okay, we're good to go. So now I want to do the gradient tool again. You don't have to, you can fill it with a solid color if you want to, but I like to fill the background behind her with the same colors that we use on the border, and I like to invert it so that whatever color is on the top of the border is actually bordering my sim on the bottom, so that there's some kind of contrast. So then we drag that beneath our previous layer when we're ready, and we want to merge that down. So next, if you want to add a shadow, you go to Filters, Light and Shadow, Drop Shadow, and then some people like to go as far as 20 on these, but I still prefer 15. And then, see, you have your shadow, then you'll want to drag that under your previous layer and merge down. Now we want to position her. So we want to select all, and then we want to scale her back up. And I want her to be pretty big because that thumbnail is going to be tiny, and we want to be able to see her. We want her to grab attention. So I think I want her to be underneath the border. So I'm just going to drag her layer underneath our border layer here. I'm going to hit scale, because I think I want the top of her bun and the bottom of her legs underneath the border, so it doesn't look like I just chopped her off. And see, we have a floating selection again, so just click to new layer. And then, so this drop shadow layer doesn't have anything on it, so we want to delete that. And again, you'll find her, she's on top of the border, so you just want to drag that back down. And there's our first sim. So then I'm going to do the same thing with the elder screenshot I have. So I'm going to open as layers and find the one that I want. I'm gonna turn off the rest of our layers so I can focus on just this. Normally, I would love to have the little effects from Create a Sim in my picture, but I really like the way that she looks right here. So I'm going to add an alpha channel. Don't ever forget to do that. And then by color selection, select the green. I'm gonna delete, and then I'm gonna invert. and then I'm going to shrink by 1 pixel, and then I'm gonna invert again, and then I'm gonna delete. Now to get rid of this stuff over here, all you have to do is make sure that your layer is selected, select all, and then choose the eraser button, and just go through and erase that. Now, it looks like all of that part is erased, but once we do borders and stuff, it'll let us know whether or not it's been erased. So I want to add a new layer, make sure it's still transparent. And then we want to do alpha to selection. It looks like we missed a little bit right here. So we want to select all and then try to get rid of that. So let's do alpha to selection again, see if it's gone. It's gone. Perfect. So now I want to, you know what? I actually want to move her up a little bit. So I'm gonna select all and then move her up and then go back to alpha to selection. And then I want to make sure that border number 1 is selected. We want to grow by 3 pixels. I want white. And then I want to bucket fill that layer, drag it down. I can kind of hardly see it. So I am going to switch that to black, fill it in, and then drag it down and see how that looks. I kind of like that actually. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge that down, and then I'm going to add a new transparent layer. I'm going to grow by 8. And then I kind of want to do something different with her background. I'm not sure what, but I really like the colors on her dress. So I'm thinking I might go for a pinker color, pinky purple. I don't know, maybe even a little pinker than that. I kind of like that. And then maybe an orange, like a light orange. I kind of like that. So that's a weird combination, but it's the colors that are on her dress that aren't pink or blue, which are the most dominant colors. So I'm gonna go ahead and select the gradient tool, and then we're going to fill that in. And you can see over here there's more stuff that's colored, so we can erase that here in a second. I'm gonna drag that down and just see how it looks. I do like it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and merge that down. And then I'm gonna select all, and then we're gonna erase these colors over here. Okay, so let's pull up the rest of our items here and see how it looks. I think I will also have her behind the border just because her legs are cut off. So we don't want her looking chopped legged. And I don't know, I might actually switch their position. So I might go to this layer and move it a little bit, and then move this one over here, like she's looking at her younger self, you know? And I might be able to scale her up just a little bit, maybe not too much. All right, then we will take this gal here and move her here, or we might move her here between the baby and elder Effie in the background. And there's most of our thumbnail done. So the one thing we did forget to do was add a shadow to elder Effie. So I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm gonna move this layer down beneath the border here, and I'm going to alpha to selection, which is important, and do a drop shadow of 15, offset, reorder the layer, and then merge it down. Select all, and then we want to add our font. So I recently, now if you've seen my 100 baby challenge or you've watched earlier videos, you'll know my thumbnails suck. These aren't super great, but they're better than my previous ones. And even the ones before that, I was just using screenshots from the game, which is like a huge no. So I like to keep my font consistent and the placing of it consistent. So it doesn't matter where you do this, you just need to get the text down. So I want to type 100 baby, which is the title of all my videos, and then I'll highlight that, and I will choose the font that I always use, which is Ravi semi-expanded, and then I want to make this like 300 pixels. You can always size it down later with your layers. but you want to make it nice and big. So there we go. I like to make mine white, my font, and then we will add borders and stuff like that, shadows, etc. But you want to make sure every part of your font is showing. So like mine earlier was cutting off the bottom of the Y. You want to make sure that that's showing. So then see this text layer here in your layers window? You want to merge that down to your new transparent window. And then we can resize it. So if you want to rotate it, resize it, whatever, you can do it now. So this may not be the size we keep it, but I just want to make sure that it fits within the window while we do borders and shadows. So now you want to create a new transparent layer. You want to go back to your layer with the words on it, alpha to selection, select your new layer, and then I like to grow this one by about actually, I'll keep it at 3. And then I like to border this in black. It really makes it pop. And then reorder your layers over here and merge that one down. And then create a new transparent layer. I like to grow this one by about 10. And then again, I like to keep the colors consistent with the border. And I like this layer to be gradient. So you can do it horizontally, you can do it vertically, whatever works for you. I kind of like that one. So I'm going to go ahead and merge that one down. And then we are going to add a drop shadow. I do like to make this 120 just because it's the lettering and you want people to see that. Then we'll reorder and merge that down. So you want to make sure that your text, your borders, and your shadows are all merged together before we move the text around. So I want to select all, and then I want to rotate this because I like putting the 100 baby title on either the left or the right side of the thumbnail. We can rotate that, and now we have a floating selection again. So we want to say to new layer. Okay, so now I want to resize it so I can see the whole thing in the thumbnail. And I like to have this over the border, honestly. So I like to scale it like that, but then you can unlink this for the text because see there's some empty space right here, so I like to maybe make it a little bit longer until it mostly fills that space. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And then I want to add a new layer because I want to put the episode number that this is. I want people to be able to see that. So I'm gonna put it somewhere over here. We're gonna say episode 76. And then we're gonna do Ravi semi-expanded. And then I like to make the episode font just a tad bit smaller than the title font. So I'm gonna make this 250. You wanna make sure that every part of the letter is showing. I like to make this white again. And then we wanna go ahead and merge that down. So then, of course, alpha to selection, new layer. And then I think we grew the last one by 3 pixels. And we wanna fill that in. Oops, we don't wanna fill it in with yellow though. We wanna fill it in with black. Reorder those layers, merge them down, create a new layer, grow by 10 pixels this time, and then you can choose whatever colors you want, really. I like to do what I did for the title, but I want to swap the order. So instead of blending from left to right, I'm gonna blend from right to left. And that makes it just a tad bit different from the title, but still the same kind of color scheme. And then we wanna reorder that layer, merge it down, and then we want the drop shadow. I like to also keep that consistent with the title, so I keep it at 20. And then we want to reorder that layer, merge it down, and now we want to select all, and then we want to resize this. So sometimes I like to have the episode number peeking out from one of my Sims and in front of the other, which is really kind of hard to figure out sometimes. But this should be easy. So I think I want it peeking out from Grandma Effie and coming out in front of young Effie. So all I do is drop it down until it's in between those 2 layers. And then I kind of want to just move it into a place that it looks okay. And I didn't really want it underneath the border, but at this point it's gonna have to be. So I'm gonna avoid putting it anywhere near the border. maybe a little close, but not to where you can see whether or not it's above or below the border. But I kind of like that it looks like it's, you know, peeking out. So I think that looks pretty good. I mean, there's not really anything else I would do to this except maybe make the background a little blurrier. So I want to make sure I can't see anything but the background, select all of it, and then do the Gaussian blur maybe 1 or 2 more times. See, I had the top layer here selected, so it selected everything within that layer. So let's go ahead and make sure the correct layer is selected and then do the Gaussian blur. It's not going to make that much of a difference, but I feel like maybe the foreground needs to stand out a little more. So here we go. There is the thumbnail. Now quickly, before you export it, you want to make sure that all of the layers are merged together. And then when you do export it, wherever you export it to, so I will export it to my 100 baby file, and I'm gonna name it episode 76 final_moment, so I know that it's a screenshot. Even though you can see it, I still like to name it that. And then you want to go down here to select file type by extension, and you want to make sure it's a JPEG. If you try to upload it as a PNG, YouTube won't like that. It's not going to accept it. So export it as a JPEG, and then let's go see what that looks like on screen. All right, so you can see down here, all of the elements are pretty clearly defined. You can tell there's a border. You can read the 100 baby and the episode 76, which is what is really, really good about this thumbnail, because this is what people are going to see online, and you can clearly tell that there are 2 Sims. So once they click on your video or they get the notification on their phone or their tablet or whatever, they'll be able to see it more clearly. And furthermore, if you decide to advertise on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, this right here is what people are going to see, whereas on YouTube, this is what people are going to see, and you can still tell what it is, which is great. So I really thoroughly enjoyed making these thumbnails. I want to really just let Simpanions know that I really appreciated their video. It helped me out so much. I went from a thumbnail like this, which isn't terrible, but you can't see it when it's small, to a thumbnail like this, which still, you know, it looks way more professional than this one does. And I don't know, I like it. Maybe it's not 100% professional, but it's better than this. So if you enjoyed my video, remember to subscribe and hit the thumbs up button so that YouTube knows to suggest this to viewers like you who might need some help walking through the GIMP tutorial for Sims 4 thumbnails. Also, be sure to check out that Simpanions video. She has a lot more, not a lot more, but she has a few more tricks and some other things that she does that I did not cover in this video. So if you want a few other techniques, go check out her video. That's all I've got for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have a different way of doing things, please let us know in the comments below. And until next time, guys, happy thumbnailing.